way.
So Blank is an action stealth game that's all about teleporting and kicking ass. You play as a character named Iris, who has had a bunch of experiments performed on her and gets the ability to teleport. And the game is essentially about you escaping a facility. So we kind of give a standard setup, but it really comes down to the gameplay. And what sets Blink apart from many other games is that a lot of it has to do with the controls. For example, it's not a button press that allows you to teleport, but it's a flick. So it's similar to the controls of, let's say, Skate from EA. But it has a very, as I said, action stealth way, which means you can play it in multiple ways. If you think of actually Arkham Asylum as a very similar game in the kind of the gun sections, where you're kind of getting out of sight, coming in and taking out one or two guys and disappearing. Most of Blink plays like that. It's very get in, get out, deal a lot of damage. You're a glass cannon, you die very easily, and really aiming to help players get as much tension as they possibly can through the experience. At the University of Southern California, we have a class called the Advanced Games Project, and this is a class that, unlike most classes, takes place over 2 semesters, and most students generally take it in their final year. There are 4 different majors which participate in the class, because there are 2 different games majors at USC, and both the undergraduate and graduate versions of these majors participate in the class. What happens is before the class starts, the semester before, if you have an idea for a game, you can go and pitch it. And there's a whole process in which you submit a proposal, and then if you're selected as a finalist, you get to pitch to a bunch of panel of industry judges. And then once you're selected, then you can find a team. And for the next year, you work on this game. And the largest games from USC generally come out of this class. So, in 2011, I think it was about like April or May, I had an idea for Blank, but it was very simple. It was just, at the time I was thinking of a heist game, and I really wanted to do something teleporting, because teleporting's awesome, except not a lot of games use it, which seems to actually be funny because it's changing now. Ever since we made Blink, we've been seeing the mechanic just flying around. But traditionally, teleportation is the most common in 2D fighters, which is a really weird genre for the type of mechanic it is. But anyway, so I knew that's what it was. Pitched the game. I submitted the proposal, got accepted, pitched the game, and that was accepted. And so, we started off very small. It was just me and my producer, Michael. And I just had an idea for a game, and I wrote it down, and I showed it to people, and within one day, I think we got up to 8 people, and the next day we were like 12 or 14. And so we had a solid, when we pitched the game to the industry, we actually had a solid team all ready to go. And we worked on it over the next year. It was part of a class, but really that's an excuse to get it done. Of course, the time we work on it is all outside of class time, and it's, but that's how it started. So in Engine, it was about 8 months of work. All in all, I would say about 13 months if you take into the fact that a large part of that was recruiting, a large part of that was learning the tool set, and building prototypes in Unity, which we did before we moved into Unreal. But in Unreal, when we started actually making the game, it was about 8 months. Inspirations from Blink come from basically any game that makes you feel badass, because that was our tagline. We wanted to be an awesome badass experience. So we started looking at games that make you feel badass, and we got a bunch of different ones. Deus Ex: Human Revolution was up on there. Splinter Cells, many different Splinter Cells were up there. Batman: Arkham Asylum was on there. We've actually been compared a lot to Portal and Mass Effect, but they actually weren't really inspirations for anything apart from perhaps music, which was funny. we, as I mentioned, actually Skate was a really big inspiration. And that sounds weird because the games are totally different, but we really wanted to challenge conventional control schemes. We wanted to say that the mechanics should be fun inherently by playing the game. If you're just sitting without a screen with a controller, imagine that you're playing the game, that should be inherently fun. And so we thought of games that did that. And for me personally, Skate did that brilliantly well. And so sure, yeah, that's actually our our tagline started being, about being the most badass student experience, and it changed into that because we thought we could actually use Blink to make a statement. And so when I originally pitched the game, it wasn't a 5 to 10 minute experience. It was like a 40-minute experience to an hour experience, which is very common among student games. And I built a lot of what I would call student games, and I love them because they're about exploring a very risky mechanic, a very creative mechanic in as many ways as possible. And that's awesome. But as a result, generally, that tends to lack a lot of polish in all aspects of production. And so when we were thinking, we got a lot of advice from people in the industry, one of them being Gordon Bellamy from the IGDA, who recently moved to Tencent. He told us from the beginning that, listen, I'm going to propose something. Here's an idea for you guys, but why don't you break that model and why don't you do something that no other student is doing, which is instead of trying to make the indie student game, why not go for the AAA experience? And what you don't have is you don't have the experience, you don't have the resources, and you don't have the time. So what you do is you limit yourself. You use free resources. You limit yourself to a very 5 to 10 minute chunk of gameplay, and you try to show people that even though you're students now, in a year you won't be, and you're capable of producing this quality of work. So that was the angle that we took, and it was our core pillar. It defined everything that we did. We were fortunate enough on the project to get advisement from both Sony Santa Monica and Microsoft Game Studios for different aspects, and they would treat us as if we went to them asking them to treat us as if we were part of their studio. We don't want to be thought of as a student team. Even if we physically can't get things done, we want to feel like we're being compared to Gears of War 3. We want to feel like we're being compared to God of War. We want to, whether we live up to that or not is that's our problem, but it was just a realization that, hey, in like 8 months, we're not going to be students anymore. A couple of things. The first is stop talking and build stuff, which everyone repeats, but it's really big. It's really, really, really big because the more you make shitty games, the more you learn about games, and I think that's really important. So that's part of it. I think just being open to. So like I started off thinking I was going to be a game programmer. I then thought I was going to be a producer. I now got hired at Sony Santa Monica as a designer, and so you kind of these phases where it's just, look, just do anything to make games. So that's the first part, and a lot of people do that. The second part, I think, is reach out. Go to events, meet people, introduce yourselves, get people to play your games. I mean, if you cannot publicly have someone play your game and rip you to shreds about it, then there's a problem. You have to be very comfortable, no matter how crappy your game is, to get people to play it, improve it, play it, improve it. That iteration cycle is insanely important. And finally, once you're at the level where you think you have it, that's where the advice from Blink kind of kicks in, where challenge the medium. Do something that people aren't doing, and people will take notice. When we went around to GDC and we showed Blink it right before, I think it was about 6 weeks before we had completed it. It was much older of a build, very broken. But we just went around GDC and we showed it to a bunch of people in the industry, and not one of them thought we were students. And I think that was a really cool feeling. I mean, I showed it to Robin Walker from Valve, the creator of Team Fortress, and he just looked at me. He was like, "Oh yeah, so like when your studio's doing this," I'm like, "I don't have a studio. Like I have Fortresses, and I'm doing we're doing this." And I think what happens, you'll find, is industry professionals really respect students who are pushing the boundaries and doing things and really working their ass off, and more importantly, being humble about it. It's like, I don't have the best game. I'm just trying to do something. I would love for you to give me advice or help me. I mean, people are willing to help if you ask politely.